All right, I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole and the Finance and Governance meetings to order. Roll call.
Trustee Bungard. Here. Trustee Cannon.
Here.
Eichelkraut. Here. Francois. Here. Nice. Here. Ziegler.
Here.
Service.
Present.
Okay, Committee of the Whole has a quorum. Finance and Governance roll call, Gary Ziegler.
Here.
Mike Service.
Here.
Debbie Bungard. Here. Lynn. Here. Thanks, and Eric is not here, but you still have a quorum.
Okay. All right. Public comment. Brian, we'll let you talk later here. So no public comment for either group. Committee of the Whole consent agenda is the minutes from the May 4th meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The bonds are neck is up, by the way, so. All right. Committee reports. Any committees kind of reports from their previous meetings? Great. So the staff reports?
I got nothing else for you today.
Nothing from the meeting.
Chris? Andrea?
Music in the Park is rolling along. We're more than halfway through.
Okay. Good weather so far for it.
Yeah, this week and next week look good too.
Absentee ballots are all out for those who have a request on file. If you are going to be around on August 11th, I recommend requesting an absentee ballot. We're coming in-person absentee voting starts at the end of the month. I want to just make a quick mention that dog license, and I'll probably do it again, but dog licenses, we stopped selling them on August 15th. So if you licensed your dog, you have about 6 weeks. And there's probably other things going on, but I'll wait till next couple weeks. Give more time for Brian.
All right. That gets us to the presentation, discussing possible action on the 2026 financial management plan workshop number 1, capital improvement. Planning presentation by Ellen. Brian, you're up.
Thank you. Would anybody like a hard copy?
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, I do. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Just as a reminder, do an annual financial management plan, we shorthand to FMP, every year for the village. It's to help augment your budget each year, but it also creates kind of a look forward, not only for your capital improvement plan, but for the utilities and the levy supported governmental funds as well. So we start with the capital improvement plan every summer, and then we go into operating levy and utilities and tax increment districts as we approach fall and budget season. This meeting happened last year. I think it was like July 1st or something like that, but it's always kind of that first meeting in July, so we're here again. One thing I just want to note right off the bat on this agenda slide, that this is the all-in list. So staff supplied an all-in list of all of the capital improvement projects that they would put forward 2027 through 2036. So a lot of this discussion should then be centered around, how are we going to fund this? Which obviously that's our job as the municipal advisor here. But then what are those resulting financial impacts? And then we're looking to get kind of future board, this discussion here today should help kind of drive your decision framework in the future. as you're kind of approving and prioritizing this list of projects. So by all means, is it, you adopt a CIP and then it stops for 10 years, right? We're always kind of navigating this. But I think it is imperative to note that, right, it's kind of all of the projects put forward. And then if you want to use this as a guiding post to say, hey, we would like, tax rate of this, or can we look at a total impact of, this dollar amount? We'll kind of get into that when we get into future slides, but that's kind of the discussion. It's not really like, let's rip out this project because I don't like this project more so than the other project. This is kind of just the financial components of these projects, and then kind of direction to us working with staff on like, are there any financial directives that you want to give staff and us to move this forward? So the next page is kind of the funding sources by year for all of your projects. Later on, towards the end, there's table 2, which is about 4 pages, maybe 5 pages long of the whole list. You don't need to go to that right now. I'm just letting you know if you're like, what projects make up to all the projects in 2030 or 2027. You can go to that and kind of see those projects. So, but here, just a couple of quick notes. Right now we are looking at the majority of this. So we have $41.5 million worth of projects, the majority of which would be funded by debt, 20.8 million with geo debt, and then 16.4 million with revenue debt. The rest of it is kind of cash, special assessments, kind of those other sources of revenue. Under levy limits, right, you're restricted with your ability to raise cash via tax levy, which is the largest revenue source for the general fund. And then obviously utility rates, you're somewhat limited as well with the Public Service Commission on the water side. And obviously there's just kind of a careful measure there in terms of how much you want to charge, but it's to understand that you obviously can't fund all of this with cash. The other element that I would always bring up, and I know we talked about last year, is while debt does come with interest expense, one benefit of it as well is generational equity, right? Not all of today's users are tomorrow's users, and debt provides a repayment term in which tomorrow's users will still be using that asset and be able to pay for it. Right? If they move into the village in year 15, they start paying into that as well. So that's just kind of the breakout now as we go into it of sources of funding. The final thing I'll note on this slide is each time we go into a financing execution, we obviously revisit what's the cash position at that time, what's the interest rate market, right? What's the benefit of revenue versus general obligation debt, and how do we kind of go about the financing vehicle at each time. So again, this is not set it and forget it for us either. So you guys are revisiting your projects, we're always revisiting how to finance things. So just kind of understand that by no means is this committal to the sources of funding at this point in time. So on the next slide, this is kind of current debt structure. So this is debt that already exists. And the whole point here is to understand what your current tax levy responsibility is for your existing debt. So in this budget year, which the levy's already passed, it's not changing, debt service levy for the whole village was $926,612. And you can see where it goes into the future. So a slight increase by about $2,000 next year. And then beyond that, it drops off. So this is what we look at when we're determining, all right, we have some new financings upcoming. What sort of debt payments can we fit into your existing structure? So this is like the headlights on your, financing road for us, right? We can kind of see a path with the drops in debt to make sure that we don't take your debt service tax rate on a roller coaster ride. The other thing that I'll mention is we structure around that existing debt, but there are other variables that can kind of change our opinions when we get to executing a financing. For example, revaluations, right? That gives you more taxable value. That can also impact tax rate as well, as you do those, but we just kind of always want to be sensitive when revaluations happen. The same things happen when there's a TID closure, as well. You get added taxable value there, as well. So, but you don't really have the tax rate impact because the individual assessments all aren't rising. It's just kind of more taxable value. Poof, there it is. So I just say, like, we're not just looking at this only, and in a vacuum. There are other components when we go to execute financing as to, you know, is there a revaluation coming up in the next year, TID closure, things like that. So.
This is just geo debt on this, right?
Correct. So then on the next slide, just contextually walking through the impact, and then I'll have you all turn your sheets to table 4, but just give me a sec to kind of hit the highlights here. The max tax rate for debt when we go out and, you know, issue the $20.8 million of general obligation debt, kind of what does that do? Your current tax rate's about $2.17. It would take it up to $3.31, which is a pretty big jump. And again, this is all in projects. So the options there to obviously reduce it, all other things being equal, absent of moving projects, of course, or removing projects altogether, would be mechanisms, you know, in terms of the financing that you can always like delay principal, you can capitalize interest, you can do interim financing, all of these other things, but we call it punitive, right? Because you're sacrificing interest expense, meaning you're having more interest expense to elongate your payments. So it's punitive that way, but you're kind of going for the goal of a more structured impact in terms of, you know, that immediate impact. Like I said, we investigate all of those things when we get into each financing execution. When you say, all right, here are the projects we want to finance, then we start really drilling down on like, here's 4 options to evaluate there. And then the total cost of debt to a sample taxpayer for 27 through 2051 would be $15,000. So that buys that $20.8 million of general obligation debt finance projects. So while that seems like a lot, understand that's spread out over almost 30 years there, about 34 years. But now we can kind of go to table 4, so I'm going to actually have you jump quite a few pages here. So if you kind of keep going past the presentation, and then table 4, it'll be stated on the top left in orange, if you have one of my printed packets, and then it'll say financing plan tax impact. So if you just, I'll give you all a second to go there. So as I mentioned, the existing debt profile, kind of starting left to right, is in blue. That's what we were talking about the slide before. That's things we can't change today, right? We have this debt outstanding. You can obviously prepay some of it, things like that, but just understand without doing any prepayments or anything, we're not changing that. So in the blue is kind of where you're set up. And then in the orange, we start to issue, you know, and plan out those future debt issues for the $20.8 million of geo debt financing. You have certain purposes in each financing that would have a repayment from other revenue sources. And so in the middle of this page, you'll see kind of abatement columns where it says urban forestry, water and sewer. Sometimes we decide to do a geo debt financing that includes multiple sources of repayment because we achieve economies of scale in terms of debt issuance costs, as well as general obligation debt generally comes with a lower interest rate. It's just seen as more secure to the bondholder than revenue debt. One of the reasons for that, you have an irrevocable tax authority, meaning you can levy whatever the heck you want for a debt service payment when it's issued as general obligation debt. So that's why the bondholder sees that as more secure. But understand we are showing some purposes from other sources of revenue, so therefore we would not tax for that. And that's why you see the negative columns in the middle there for those 3 abatement sources. And then to the right column next to those abatement sources, you'll see total new debt or net debt service levy. This is kind of existing debt plus all of this new debt minus those new abatements and kind of showing you where that goes. we just have some pretty large projects in the first couple of years where there's some kind of unavoidable, right, new payments. So you have a $10.4 million issue, and then almost an $18 million issue in 27, and then correspondingly 2029. And so we're kind of creeping up that debt service levy, but again, almost unavoidable unless we do capitalized interest or write some of those unique financing elements. So I would just kind of put a keen eye in terms of your prioritization and decision framework when you go to review the projects, throughout the summer and kind of refine this list. Some of it can be timing, right? We just have a lot of projects happening in a short amount of time. So if you're kind of saying, I would like you to really smooth this out, Brian, if you don't give me, kind of restructured project timeline, then really the only way to do that is through capitalized interest or interim financing, which again, penalizes you on the back end. So there you'll kind of see that levy change from prior year in kind of 3/4 of the way left to right. And again, with all of this new debt, we can kind of start to slow down the increases in 2031. And then it starts to go negative after that point. But then beyond that, right, just kind of looking at that, although there are a few, it's that increase, even though there's still debt service levy increases, we're kind of projecting, any sort of growth would be able to keep up with that. So the tax bill for debt does actually start to go down in 2031. So the second to rightmost column is what I'm looking at when I say that. That's the annual debt service taxes change from the prior year. So this doesn't include your operating levy or anything like that, just looking at the debt service. That's kind of what we're looking at. So again, it's those near term kind of 27 through 29 and 2030 projects that are kind of causing the initial spike, right? There's just a lot of projects right off the bat. So again, that's what's causing the tax bill increase. And then the rightmost column is to say, what if the existing debt didn't exist? What's kind of the cost for the new projects? That's where you see at the bottom right. And again, I know it's probably pretty small, so I'll bring magnifying glasses next time. But that's the $15,000 that I'm talking about in the bottom right corner. And kind of what's the cost to the sample taxpayer over the next 34 years of debt? And what does that all buy, right? You can look at the debt funded projects, and that's kind of where you get the sense of like, this is what you're getting for that $15,000 over 34 years. So just kind of want to point, that's the main numbersy table you want to pay attention to, because that'll kind of, help you understand kind of the impact of the plan. So then on the next slide, which is, I'm back on slide 6, which says impacts of the current plan. So if you scroll back a few pages. So impact, yep, there you go. Impact of the current plan is slide 6 in the bottom right corner. Table 5 is looking at your general obligation debt limit. So by statute, you can have 5% of your total equalized value in general obligation debt. You cannot exceed that. So again, this is a limit, not a goal. But you want to make sure that you're always below that. If you were to execute all of these projects kind of as is, you get to 85% of that limit, which does seem relatively high. One thing I'll just note on that is typically we see communities around 50% of that limit. And we generally recommend trying to not go over 50 to 75% of that limit. I will say some of the existing debt though is currently elevated because of the TIF debt from last year that will amortize rather quickly within the next 6 years. So it's kind of like you had some projects and some capacity within the TIF district to pay for those projects. So those are not impacting the levy at all, but it was issued on a general obligation basis to get you lower interest rates. So that is impacting your statutory limit currently. That'll amortize relatively quickly over the next 6 budget cycles here. So I would just say like, because of those near-term large project years and issuing again in 27 and 29, right, that quickly elevates the debt limit because that existing debt hasn't dropped off yet. And then table 6, what we're doing here is kind of looking at, you know, the utilities' ability to repay existing debt and new debt based off of your 2025 audited numbers. And so that can look a little ugly there. The one thing I'll point out is we come back and do a 10-year rate plan for the utilities to be able to pay for some of these things. One thing I'll just note here, the water utility looks quite negative because there's, I think it's like $14 million just off the top of my head, if I remember right, of projects all in 2030 or later that are kind of all at once. And I would just kind of question, you know, your ability to tackle all of those all at that time. And so that would be another area that I think could be under consideration for review, is kind of, would we actually do all of these water projects all at once? Or would these be spread out? So again, those would be other things to kind of analyze there. You all know you're governed by the Public Service Commission when it comes to water rates. So we have a very detailed analysis that we give on what the future water rate adjustments would look like, because we can predict the PSC math with the capital improvement plan. So I would say refinement on the water side is highly important for those two reasons. One, we'll get a better picture, predict what PSC will say they want your rates to be. Two, there's definitely some work to do if you guys want to tackle the CIP as is. And it could be kind of scary rate adjustments. So I'd just say, like, generally don't see communities tackle that many projects all in one year, kind of like a short amount of time on the water utility. So another thing to kind of check into as you're reviewing and refining this plan over the summer. And then finally, kind of my moving forward slide, which you don't really have to go to, I can just verbalize it, is we're really just seeking direction from the board, whether that's this meeting or a future meeting, to, you know, refine that project list as you see fit, identify any financial goals, right, that you want to set the standard for, meaning, you know, do you want to shoot for certain general obligation debt capacity limits, you know, 50% of geo debt or 75% of that geo debt limit, you know, those can be good guiding posts for staff to kind of move projects around. If you're like, we like the all-in list because then we can see every project that the departments are really wanting to do. But if we set some goals, you know, in terms of financial metrics, that can help them decide when, right, to do those as well. If you had other structuring goals, meaning, hey, we don't want the tax rate to go over this, you know, things like that, those would be other things, you know, that you could help set those benchmarks so that then we can, you know, work with staff to kind of move things around as well. And the other note is just, I'll obviously be back for other workshops. So there'll be other times to kind of talk about this and refine this as well. So again, I know it's like drinking from the water hose, you know, kind of this first go around. So if you want to talk about it at several meetings and then we come back to it, you know, at later meetings and you see a second option or something like that, that's the whole point of this.
So the question on table 5, that does not include the reval figures in there, correct?
Reval for 1126 values?
Yeah.
It wouldn't regardless because it's on an equalized value.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's the state law there is, it goes, your general obligation debt limit is to equalized value, and in a reval, you're taking your assessed to that equalized.
Yeah. So, but that number will go, it'll be different once it's finalized, so.
Your assessed values will be different, so, and ultimately that's why we didn't solve the tax rate on an assessed, you know, we do that when we get into the operating budget, get a little bit more minute. But the reason that I get scared to predict that until we start to see it with the MAR and then the certified values coming out in August is all of the individual property values go up, right? So it's like, hey, more taxable value, but they're taxed on more. So you may see a tax rate drop, but you don't always see a tax bill drop. So, but I'll explain all that when we get into.
And I appreciate you guys are always pretty conservative with your figures, which is good, but, so. Questions for Brian? But this is the first of 3, right?
Yep.
I just have one question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it has 1.95 million in sewer revenue debt over the course of the plan. But the major project in that is the north side sewer extension. It has that being paid by cash. Is it revenue debt or cash that's paying for that?
Sure, let me go to that table 2, and we can find that project.
But the cash balance takes a huge hit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying this doesn't want to pay cash, but it's listed with 2 different payment methods essentially.
So if I recall, like you said that, a large portion of that was going to be paid with cash, and then it was going to be
Kind of a portion of it by the developer and then the rest would be.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So if that's the case, where's that 1.9 million revenue debt?
Sure, that's later on for the sludge storage and treatment SCADA, part debt, part cash for that one. But just note, that's for a different project kind of later on. One of the items there is, just a concern of where the sewer cash would go with all of these projects. And again, that would be something that we kind of evaluate with the 10-year plan, later workshop with the sewer utility. I just kind of looking at your 25 audit and seeing all the cash that you're saying, it's almost like acknowledging that future operating expenses won't increase, which again, we're going to evaluate that when we get to the utility portion. So I just wanted to throw in, maybe we do issue one set of like revenue bonds for the sewer utility, given the magnitude of cash that was shown in the capital improvement plan.
My general feeling of looking at this, we have to sharpen our pencils some. I don't personally like seeing the cash balance drop like that. And, the debt ratio, I don't like seeing it at 85% either. I'd like to keep that somewhere without having an actual knowledgeable number, but, just a gut feeling, 65%, something lower would be.
I would say at least 75%.
I mean, that's just not knowing how that actually plays out when we look at the numbers, so.
Yeah, and I'll just provide some context that might help,
Yeah.
you guys with that. The 85%, what number I like to look at is kind of residual capacity, right? How much actual dollars does that leave you? That leaves you about 4.2 million left to borrow, which could be scary, right? If you had a large asset go out and, right, you need to borrow on an emergency basis and go get that money now. Maybe you're reimbursed later, so it's only a short-term borrowing. But that's kind of the way that we tend to look at that is, what's your residual capacity like? And, just looking at the size of the village, having only 4.2 million left to borrow, that's thin margins, right? And obviously with inflation and other pressures like that on just your regular replacement projects, I would see validity in that concern. When you get closer to 75%, right, a couple of years later on that table, it's like you're getting that 8 million left of residual capacity, which is something that you can definitely have that wiggle room to borrow for. But some communities, set that standard as a policy, which you're certainly welcome to kind of revise. And, through this process, I would just say that generally we see communities stick it to 50 to 75%. I would say communities of your size, generally you're seeing that 75%, only because you just want to acknowledge sometimes growth dictates the need for some borrowing needs and things like that. So.
Scenarios where that might come into play, I think is always useful. So things like the flood that happened and, you know, the dam needed to be repaired. You know, a tornado again that takes out the water tower or the treatment plant, and now we have to replace that. We have to issue debt for that. And how many years did it take us to get reimbursed for the dam?
Long time.
It took 2 or 3, 4 years or
Damn,
something, I think.
Like
5?
Yeah, it was a long, yeah.
Yeah.
18, and we didn't get it done.
2018, I believe that chip rolled into 20.
24.
So, you know, I think it's important for everyone to realize that, you know, when you say we could issue, you know, $4 million of debt knowing we're gonna get paid back for it, we're paying interest on that and everything for 4 or 5 years actually, before we get paid back on it. So that's not, you know, a quick turnaround type of thing, so.
Yeah, I would say sticking around, I'd feel a lot better at 75 as opposed to 85. I would also, that surge of debt in the first few years, I think we need to find a way to kind of even that out.
Like I said, we gotta sharpen our pencils and go through those CIP projects and either cut them or move them. That's what we'll be doing.
Really, my parks alone.
So.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you.
All right, thank you all, appreciate it.
You.
Yep, you have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, you too.
So that's, yeah. So that's it.
So what, just curious a little bit, water projects in,
Big ones?
at the end of this, yeah, in 2036.
Sure. I can talk to you about those. That's sort of a shot across the bow from Ian. It's sort of a warning.
Yeah.
That if we continue to grow, these things are gonna come. It consists of, I think, 4 different things. I don't recall if the exact term is a lift station, like we have for the sewer system, but
Yep.
for water, an additional, water tower or standpipe, a water main going, a river crossing, the water main, and then a 4th well house. So none of these are projected to be needed in the next 15 to 20 years, but when we hit that 20-year, we might need to start might need to be looking at 1 or more of those. So they exist on the horizon, but that would depend on our growth.
As fast as we're scheduled to grow, it seems like we're gonna need that stuff sooner versus later.
It's important to have that number in there so that, you know, it influences our ratios now by being able to project out the future that far, so that when we do have to make a decision on maybe it's 2 of these things that have to happen, we are in good shape to be able to take it on and not standing here looking at each other going, how are we going to come up with 4 million for a water tower or something?
Well, I also think if, you know, at the end of this growth, we have $15 million in water projects, that right there is a good case to do a better job managing the growth itself.
Gabe would always say, growth pays for growth.
What's that?
Growth pays for growth.
I personally believe in smart growth.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think there's pretty good evidence here that growth doesn't pay for itself.
Anybody else got anything?
Let's see.
All right. Still gonna have kind of a kill here, so, but, all right. If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
Make a motion to adjourn committees all.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
And that's at 6:34, and then I would entertain a motion to adjourn finance and governance.
I'll make a motion to adjourn finance and governance.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Eric and Luann, thank you for coming tonight. We're still meeting next week, so.
Seeing 7 o'clock, I'm going to call to order the July 6th Village Board of Trustees meeting. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes, Trustee Baumgart. Here. Cannon.
Here.
Eichelkraut. Here. Francois. Here. Knight. Here. Ziegler.
Here.
Jervis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Public comments. Do you have anyone registered for public comments?
I have no one registered for public comment tonight.
Move on. The consent agenda. All items of the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member requests it, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered the first item after approval of the consent agenda. And we are going to bring out item C for Brother Love as a separate item, and E for the board payroll as a separate item. So that leaves the consent agenda of A, B, and D, which is village board meeting minutes from June 15th, the June check register, and Q2 budget year to date.
Move we approve consent agenda items A, B, and D.
Second.
Motion by Gary, second by Melissa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item is item C for the Brother Love Tempe liquor license application. I assume this is out because Gary needs to abstain, right?
Yep.
So I make a motion to approve the application for the Brother Love Festival.
Second.
Give that to Scott. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
And abstained. So, 6. Motion passes. And the last item is the board payroll. So
The updated board payroll was emailed to y'all with the additions of Debbie and Scott's time sheets.
What do I do about mine? We can talk later, right? I didn't know.
Yeah, if you had yours now, we could add it, but if not, we can put it in the next quarters.
It's fine. I want to go through and make sure that it is, and make sure I have the two that I think I missed 2, but I want to go back and make sure I'm right.
Okay.
I'll move we approve the second quarter board payroll on the consent agenda.
motion by Gary, second by Shelley. Approve. Missy will have hers possibly next quarter. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. President's report. Well, this is our first meeting since a while, and I'd like to thank all of the fire, EMS, police, village staff, and emergency management people, and anyone else I may have just forgotten for their stepping up in response to the tornado that came through. It was certainly a eye-opening event for village management and My neighborhood is right there, so it was something to see and experience. I'd like to thank everybody for that. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July in our 250th anniversary for this country. So it was a great thing that happened since the last meeting. That's all I have for today. Old business. Consider alcohol establishment license for the Family Dollar Class A.
Okay, bringing this back from last, meeting, since then I have reached out to our new attorney, Mr. O'Day. I'm not gonna try and pronounce his first name here. And I believe his comments were in my memo. I guess I just boil it down, that based on what he's saying, it is technically, I would still consider this a new application, a new license, which means you have a little bit more discretion. And basically whatever you guys want to do with that, we need to be sure we're documenting the reasons why, either the approval, the denial, the approval with conditions, whatever. Nothing has necessarily changed in the status of their application. Regarding, they have, I still think it's 4, it might be 5 applications for operators. Currently, pull that up real quick. It's still 4 applications for operators. None of them have been paid. We did reach out last week again to Family Dollar Corporate, and Family Dollar Corporate wanted to mail us a check, which they also told us the same thing in July, that they wanted to mail us a check for these operators' licenses, but we haven't received it yet. So they currently have 0 operators on staff. It looks like their new manager hasn't filled out her application yet either. I did go in and I talked to the assistant manager today. She said that one of her application is in. She works mainly the nights, their manager and one other employee are consistent on days, and then they have a rotating steady of other employees that kind of start and quit and start and quit. So they do have, it sounds like, 3 consistent employees at the moment that plan on sticking around, but as I said, none of them have operators licenses at this moment.
But legally, we're clear to do.
Legally, from what he said, as long as, we're clear, you have the ability to approve, you have the ability to deny. We just have to, Zach said, we record our reasonings and our documentation, document is the motto.
Operator.
They don't have a current operator. They also, their agent doesn't work currently in their,
They don't have an operator. I don't know why we're still having this conversation, to be honest. They don't have an operator, they don't get a license. That's.
There is a concern, you can still give them the license, but then we have to close them down because they don't have an operator.
Right.
You could put conditions on, we have in the past anyway, put conditions on when we would hand them that license.
Just fine without a liquor license, we're not gonna risk shutting them down for
Yeah,
any certain
walk
time.
next door to the store and get your stuff.
I'm sorry, if they get an operator, then we can revisit. They don't have an operator, this is, no, not an issue to me.
So
They don't get a license.
Exactly. We don't want to shut the store down for the people that, need it. If they don't have an operator, they don't get a license.
You've spoken with their management.
I spoke with the assistant manager tonight. I haven't actually talked to them.
But what is the status of, so what do they say about getting the fee in for these applications?
So the same thing that we struggle with their corporate is, the guy at their corporate is very nice, but they want to cut a check for the process for all these fees And we're beholden to whatever that timeline is and then the mail.
So I'm just wondering, what I'm trying to find out is there, you know, the chicken and egg situation going on, as in, they don't want to pay their fees till they have their liquor license, and we're sitting here going, we're not giving a liquor license till you've paid your fees and you have operators.
I would say that that's not exactly what's happening. I do, in the past, they have, I mean, they've cut checks and they've sent them for things that we didn't have then, like, in the past, they've sent checks for operators who then didn't work for them anymore, and so we never finished the process of like processing that operator's license. So I'm not sure what the delay from their corporate is. I also get a disconnect between the local store and the corporate. Talking with their assistant manager, she just said they don't really care about the community or what's happening here. They just, the corporate one is very, as most corporations are, they set a standard, and the standard is everyone should have a corporate license.
So forgive me, when was the last time this came in front of us? Was that 2 weeks ago?
At the last meeting, yeah, it was 3 weeks, but.
3 weeks?
Semantics.
So if we want this to be correct, though, the date on this memo is April 6th.
Well, that might be my fault, because I copied and pasted my memo from a previous memo that I wrote, maybe I didn't change the date, so I apologize. The information is correct, the memo date,
All I see is that, all I see happening is we get a check. If they send the check and their operators are paid for, they can have a license. But what's going to happen is their operators that are licensed are going to leave, then they're not going to have an operator.
Well, we can't assume that.
Well, we can't, but track record is kind of indicating of that. And then we sit with having to shut a business down. To avoid that, the rule is that you have an operator, paid licensed operator, paid for, I should say, licensed operator to sell liquor. If we go opposite of that, one, we're setting a weird precedence for everybody else in town, and two, we risk that they don't have an operator and we shut them down or tell them to move liquor out, which seems like a fight we do not need to have. I mean, I understand what their corporate wants, but the corporate is to deal with municipalities like this all the time. This is just, if they want it paid, send the check and pay. And then we issue the license and we deal with the back end consequences of that. This is a no-brainer to me. I'm not sure why this is still on here.
I agree. It's more important to me that that store stays open than they have alcohol. There are other places that people can buy alcohol. They can walk right down to the store. But there's a lot of people that use that discounted store to buy supplies because of their income.
Well, everything from hardware to everything is there.
Exactly.
My concern is that they've delayed payment.
Well, I see we have two options right now, tonight. Table it till next meeting and request that the fees be paid. And if they're not, we deny it next meeting or deny it now.
We can table it again until the next meeting, but then I think the only question and the only thing that needs to be on there is, did they pay the licensing fees? Yes? Okay, we'll move forward. If they haven't paid a licensing fee, there isn't even a reason to have this on the agenda. We can kick it down the can, kick it down the way if you want. It's fine.
We could table it
Does
for 5
anybody,
minutes they have.
does anybody have an operator's license over there?
I suppose you can do that too.
so they don't use it until they have an operator.
I make a motion, we table it until they have a license.
Can we, how does that play out?
I don't need more than one operator.
Who's gonna check on it every day to make sure that that person's there?
Right.
Well, that's PD or the Department of Revenue's responsibility to verify that their operator is actually.
I don't want to put pressure on our PD for that.
I'm just, that's like, the assumption is the business is following the rules until such time that they're found not to be following the rules.
I mean, we're not going to badger them. If they say they have an operator, then they have an operator there, so be it. But until they submit a payment, I just don't even know.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second it.
and it's been seconded by Scott, or by Gary. Motion by Scott, seconded by Gary to table until they have a licensed operator.
I think that should be thorough.
Any discussion?
I think it should be operators.
Can't hold them to more than one. Everybody should.
They only need one to illegal.
Really? Well, technically, if their agent was there all the time, but their agent does it as a manager of another store, so I don't.
They could have one, when that person's working, they can be open. If they go home or leave, they gotta lock the doors and they're closed.
I know
I mean,
there's,
from a business standpoint, that's the way they have to operate.
I know there's a concern that if we give them a license, they'll end up getting shut down. But if corporate doesn't get the license, they can go, okay, well, this isn't profitable enough for us.
I mean,
Shut
pull
it
the
down.
store.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're running the risk either way of losing the store if the corporate isn't appeased.
I mean, I don't disagree that that's something that could happen. My experience with Family Dollar is when we deny them, they just wait till next year and reapply. Like, or they wait a couple months and they reapply. I don't.
They will always do that until.
I'm opening the bar next week. It doesn't matter if I have a licensed operator or not, right?
There you go, pretty much,
Or a liquor license then, for that matter.
Well, I mean,
pretty much.
to open a licensed bar establishment, you would have to have not an operator, but an agent. Sure. Same difference at that point.
See, we're setting a precedence here that is not,
Well, they do have to have an operator, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
So every day, somebody's gonna have to go check
Well,
multiple times.
well, no, because the operators are licensed by the clerk's office, right?
you just have to,
So if you want to wait until we actually have a licensed operator within the clerk's office, whether they're in the building or not, like if you want to table until I can verify to you that they have a licensed operator, that's something we can provide.
it's not up to the board to police whether that operator is there. The board has a statute that says there's an operator. That's how I see it. Sorry. It's not up to us to police it if that operator's there and they're open or they're not. That PD can worry about that. General public can worry about that. The 12-year-old that walks out with a bottle of whiskey and everybody else can worry about it. We're issuing based on a statute that there's an operator there's somebody with a license that can, that can hold that legal operator license for the ability to sell retail alcohol. That's it. But we run out there.
We don't sit and worry about what could and should or could happen.
Or how many are there, or if,
Based on that.
that's it. We out.
So the motion is to table until they have a licensed operator. What are you confused about?
It's conflicting to me, but
Probably get an operator, so 2 months.
What's conflicting?
Be 2 months before it gets
What
put
are you
back up.
conflicted about?
So
I'm conflicted because we've asked them since when did they put in their initial application? April?
This time?
Yeah, this
They
time.
didn't fill out their application and it was early April, about the same time everybody else.
And now we're into July and they still
We
haven't
still don't have
paid
anybody,
the
it's been 3 months.
I have, to be clear, I have their fees for their actual for their liquor licenses. I don't have the fees for their operators. They have no licensed operators because they haven't paid the fees for those. An operator's license is separate from their from their class B, from their class A licensing fees.
Yeah.
So, like, they have paid.
So why did they pay part of it, not all of it?
They paid for the retail license. They didn't pay for their operators to get licensed. Like J&M's has their retail license.
Right.
I pay for my bartending license.
Yeah, when I worked at Stanford, I get that. But when
They haven't paid for it. And none of their operators have said, we're gonna go in and pay for it ourselves. So they don't have an operator that's paid for licensed. Period. This isn't even our statute. This is state statute.
Right, no, I get that. What I'm saying is why would they pay part and not the other?
Well, because I think it's a it's actually two separate people. The person that I talked to for the Class A applications and stuff is separate from the person that my deputy clerk has been talking to that handles the operator side of this. So some of it has to do with the corporate structure at Family Dollar. And I don't pretend that.
It's not black and white like Jen.
I don't pretend that they understand what we're doing. They're based in Virginia. This is Wisconsin. They're dealing with lots of different states, lots of different rules. And so I think some of that slows this whole process down for them as well. That's an assumption though.
Can I ask if they've met the requirements for a Class A license?
Yes, they have I mean, they have paid it, they've passed the inspections, they have an agent, whether or not that agent, they have an agent that's local to Wisconsin technically. The conditions for the Class A's are met. If you want to look at it this way. This discussion that we're having here is given to the discretion to a board, though, to decide whether that's enough. Because it's a lot easier
So we
to
do have the
deny a license than it is to take a license you've already approved away.
Yes.
So,
So we may have some discretion
The
here.
Public Safety Committee denied this completely, right, or didn't approve it, right?
they did recommend denial of the.
Yeah.
At that point, yeah.
At that
And if they don't have licensed operators, they're still in the same position. So
Tabling it,
then,
it's no harm, no foul though, because we're not taking their money and giving them nothing. We're not making them restart it. We're just putting them in a holding pattern until they
correct.
make their
And
next move.
there's every likelihood that they will not get around to this, so.
Yeah. So I think the motion that's on the table is just table until they get, I agree, I don't think we.
Once they have a licensed operator and they've paid and they've gone through the process and that operator that works for them, has their license in hand, I'm happy to bring this back to the board.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've spent 20 minutes on it tonight and it's the same spot we were in 3 weeks ago when we had it. So I think, yeah, we make them pass the motion to table until they get an operator and then we deal with it at that point. Because right now we're just spinning our wheels, so.
Well, I have one question about that, the procedural thing.
Okay.
If this is tabled and it takes, say, 3 months for them to pay their operator fees, and say we do approve them then, come next April, they have to reapply for renew, right?
Everybody has to renew
Yeah,
yours.
so basically, they're not getting like some prorated rate or anything.
I mean, you pay your own bread.
Just
It's the way you.
want to make sure that that's clear, and
Yeah.
they all renew at the same time is my understanding, and, all right. Any additional discussion before we go to vote? So, a motion by Scott to table until they have a licensed operator. It was seconded by Gary. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. New business. Consider resolution 2026-25 acknowledging review of the compliance maintenance annual report.
Yes.
Here's resolution.
Yes, first, my apologies to the utilities board. I would have liked to bring this to them first. But we had some technical problems with the web system and the DNR, and this was technically due on July 1st. Although don't worry, I've been in conversations with them and we're not getting dinged for that. Somewhere on their side, they erased our operator in charge's credentials to get into this form and to submit, which wasn't actually so much of a problem, except that I was filling the form out and I was doing something wrong and I couldn't get him to tell me what it was because he couldn't get it. So anyway, a little back and forth. I can take this to the next utilities board if they would like to see it and get into detail, but the important thing is to acknowledge it. You all have seen it. Last year we had a perfect score. I can't say we are quite that perfect this year. We are perfect everywhere except for one spot. Section 2.1, our operator certification education. We got a C on that. Our operator in charge is listed as operator in training for a couple of different things. And what that means is he has the certifications required, but he needs to have a year under a certified operator before he can have that basic. So we have to, the only thing for us is in the resolution, it has to say what we're going to do about it, and it does. We essentially ensure that next year our person has this, and actually Jeff will have it by next year because he's got all the credentials. It's just he needs the time in for some of those, which he will have by next year. So this is Not actually new. Before we had Dave Magnuson for our operator in charge, before we had him, we had this exact same issue. But this is small potatoes. He did very well.
So I'll ask, where do we stand with our own guys getting these certifications?
We've got Ryan working towards them.
Okay.
The time frame to get there, I honestly don't know. I would have to check in and find out. We could talk about that probably at the other board
Because I
level.
mean, we're paying MSA to be our operator in charge or whatever right now, so, and I know we talked previously at Public Works before
Yes.
the utilities board came along that, you know, we wanted our guys to get those certifications, so.
Yeah, it's something that's been on our radar for a long time. It's never dropped off. And the financial cost of doing it the way we are is not lost on me. It's a question of time and resources, and I agree completely, we need to get there. But there's two aspects. There's the credentialing, and then there's the actually being familiar with everything and comfortable with everything to actually do the work accurately. And there's two aspects there. But yeah, no denial from me that absolutely has to happen.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2026-2025, or SAS-25, sorry.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item, consider resolution 2026-26 for the creation of the AI-IT ad hoc committee.
Yeah, we would like a governing body to start helping make some of these decisions for us, quite frankly. The importance of IT and AI, I mean, it's just growing at an incredibly rapid rate, and we can't keep up with it as staff. We can't, and there's a lot of judgment calls that go into this when we have institutions like ours that deal with so much private data. So there's important decisions that should be being made at a committee level or even a board level. And the guidance, we would really appreciate having some more guidance as opposed to making all these decisions internally. This isn't something we can ignore, because even whether people outside realize it or not, you are becoming accustomed to a world where AI is part of things, and your expectations of how quickly you get results on different things are entirely influenced by AI. So your expectations from us are influenced by that. So quite frankly, you guys have expectations of speed from us on certain things, which are based off your experiences out in the private market with how fast the world feeds you information. They're all using AI. So essentially we need the use of AI. It's just part of our reality, part of our daily life now. That's the expectation. That's the speed everyone demands. And well, we need some guidance and we need some cover. And we just happen to have a couple people who are very knowledgeable on this subject.
So I know when this came to finance, there's no third person listed. Have you figured out who the third person on the committee is going to be yet?
I have not.
Okay. And this will be similar to the
Like temporary and ad hoc.
ad hoc, no power to make any, to spend any money or whatever, and that kind of stuff, okay. And again, I think I mentioned it at finance, but, one of the items on here is an AI readiness agreement or assessment and draft policy. Like I said, we're paying Dependable Solutions a ton of money, and I know you guys met with them recently, but they should be providing some of that, and that's what we're paying them, in my opinion.
Certainly. But I mean, you don't want to, this is another reason for the committee, frankly, is you don't want to put all that power into a contractor. He wants a decent oversight. And we don't, I mean, we just don't have the expertise.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all, but I'm saying we shouldn't have to go out and reinvent the wheel to come up with this policy. They should have one, or I know I do it all the time for my job. I go out and, send my peers or, do Google searches. It's amazing what you can find out there. So, save a little work for the committee. I mean, they shouldn't have to, like I said, they shouldn't have to recreate the wheel on this policy, because I'm sure there are other municipalities that have similar policies and assessment tools, so.
Right, at minimum, they can provide templates
Yes.
for some of this, and we need to, and part of what the committee will have to do is adopt and modify those templates for our specific needs and our concerns. One of the big concerns is we have, like you just said, a lot of public information. And one of the concerns that I have, because there's never been an assessment done either, and we touched base on this in the meeting with the Dependable Solutions. There's a security structure called CIS that's governed and set by national security type things. And there's different levels of it. And they're supposed to be working towards CIS level 1 for us. I suspect that will take over a year for them to get in place. And one of the concerns regarding AI and the public data that we have is concerns about, someone that has access to that, a staff member or someone, and they go and take all of our information and feed it into AI. And now all that information is out there forever. Or they link in a cloud application or something to our cloud. And now there's what are called API calls, and they can communicate with each other. And being able to control that stuff, because I know for a fact, that it's in the IT world, it's the Wild West here right now. Anyone can do pretty much anything they want to, would be my guess of what I would expect to see. The firm I work at every day, we've been implementing CIS 1.0 for 2 years now, trying to get that in place. Part of it also is evaluating where is all of the sensitive information. There should be scans done on all of our data that go and search through it and find credit card numbers, social security numbers, those type of things. So in the first step to all that is getting written policy in place that defines what criteria are supposed to be met. And then that will drive projects to do those things that I just said. So those are some of the concerns.
And I couldn't have said any of that, which is why we.
I'm all for this.
So I think, like the ad hoc lake committee, when it sunsets in November, that those responsibilities should go probably to, finance and governance probably makes the most sense, but so that we can continue to follow up on those things, just like Parks is continuing to follow up on everything that came out of the ad hoc lake committee. So, because, this is an ongoing thing and it's not going away.
Not going away.
Yeah, so.
So are you saying that we should get away from Dependable Solutions, or we should stay with them?
No, I have no issue.
We should stay with them.
Just tighten up things is what we want to do.
So we're advising,
This-
staff and dependable.
This is nothing that ever ends, okay? It's not something, I want to make sure people are clear. This isn't like you go through this checklist and, once all the check boxes are done, you go, yay.
It's not a punch list, it's continuous.
It never ends. It just changes and morphs a little bit. And, we will need, even if we had a full-time IT person here, we would still need a firm like Dependable Solutions with industry expertise and knowledge and the extra hands to help implement some of this stuff. It would probably be very daunting and overwhelming for a single IT person to manage.
Is that something we've considered though? Hiring a full-time IT person?
I don't think we have, no.
I don't think we have space in payroll right now, honestly.
Well,
Since so much of that's gonna.
There's probably, you probably can't cost justify it yet with the number. I mean, dependable solutions, we pay them, X dollars a year, which in theory, a portion of that would move into someone's salary and then, but you would have to redo a contract with dependable solutions or another vendor that is more of an ad hoc type support or project-based. And to be honest, there aren't many IT vendors anymore that do that without your managed services contract, which is what we have right now, that provides your baseline general support. They want, that's what gets you in the door and communication and contact with them. If you're a one-off type person, you're at the back of the line and the line is very long. So you probably never get in the door.
I mean, we're paying them like $54,000 a year, and that's not gonna get us a full-time person. It's been for IT.
No, it was just, I think, because for me, I think that's just something that I personally take for granted.
Yeah. And related, unrelated, I ordered your computers today.
I mean, if anything, if anything, this ad hoc committee could become a full committee at some point and, maybe meet quarterly or something, but that, I think, see what this committee turns out and go from there. I don't want to jump ahead too far with what ifs.
So the long-term plan for AI is to replace all the staff with AI, right?
That'll be interesting to see what it does.
Right.
I mean, that's one of those policy things is you need a human to check all this stuff yet for validity.
You need like some responsible usage terminology and policy too. You can't sit here, like we've all had the joke about the data center comment and then turn around and funnel everything through a data center.
Right.
I think this is a great idea. I would make a motion to approve, if that's what you're looking for, a motion on this, to approve a resolution 2026-26.
I'll second it.
All right. Motion by Missy, second by Debbie to approve the resolution. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, moving on. Consider budget resolution 2026-27 for Main Street Engineering and Planning in preparation for the 2030 DOT project.
Yep, this isn't actually anything new. This is just, DOT's getting started a little earlier than expected, and we're starting the planning and engineering this fall. And we are required to keep pace with the DOT. We've got a plan for our water and sewer lines and such that are gonna be going in, along Main Street. So all this is doing really is pushing money that, we designated for 2027 up to starting in 2026.
I'll move we approve resolution 2026-27.
Second.
All right, motion by Gary, second by Missy to approve the resolution. All right, we just had the meeting with Ellers. We shifted money in the wrong direction.
There's gonna be a lot of little shifts still.
This is unrelated to this. Do you have any sort of ad hoc, sorry if we do, any sort of ad hoc committee then set up for this project? Village members or something to talk about, just Main Street, how that's gonna look.
Public Works Utilities will go there,
So
so.
we're just gonna do that from that committee.
Yeah.
Nothing with community input.
Are y'all aware of the meeting?
Next week?
Next week, yep, the 2 meetings. There's gonna be, one that's sort of a stakeholders meeting in the afternoon. And then there's one that's kind of a public input in the evening. It's next Thursday.
And is that here, right?
That's here.
That's here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't remember what
3
time.
o'clock, right? Or
I
something?
believe it's 3 and 5.
That sounds legit.
So this resolution, I have a question, because it's been bugging me. Because this is for Main Street, correct?
Yes.
Because this resolution says regarding planned improvements to State Highway 92 between Jean Street and River Street.
Well, the project is technically 6992
So
from Jean Street to whatever, so, yeah.
it's two projects technically. One goes river to Jean and one goes river to, I can't remember, I can never remember the east side boundary and I apologize. It might be on. Hold on. The 92 project goes.
But where does 90?
From River Street to east. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That should be easy to remember. I apologize. So the 92 part of the project goes River Street to east and the 69 part of the project goes River to Jean.
Where is Jean Street?
It's, right,
Yeah, that's what I
right before
No, is that Jean Road out River?
Jean Road is across from the high school.
It's the
I'm at
last
Jean Village
road,
Drive.
it's the last right turn before you turn left at the high school.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Jean Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
Jean Road
then
is
Jean
north.
Road is north.
At the end of this,
Yankee Drive and Albert Circle and Albert Drive.
someone who's lived here forever, just tell me if I screwed up a name here or not.
No,
No.
I've lived here for over a year and I get Jean Road and Jean Street.
I just,
Yeah.
don't worry about that, because it's called Jean, the South Jean.
And then 92 threw me off too.
Yeah, well, technically, this is it's 6992 is Main Street. And then it turns to 92 at the.
The fire
at
station.
The fire station.
Right.
And then goes out of town, so.
I was thinking Jean Road
No, Jean Street.
and River Street. That's why I got
Okay.
confused.
All right.
We need to,
So good then? Okay.
you know, yeah.
I always think it's the one way up by me.
I'm just trying to tear up Main Street and make our lives miserable.
Okay, that makes
I
sense.
always think it's Jean Road too.
Yeah,
So, anyway, okay, so motion to approve. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, consider resolution 2026-2A for ratification of the disaster declaration resolution.
This is the first time we've ever declared anything. And now that we have, we need to ratify that declaration with a resolution. So that's what we're doing. It's basically just a CYA so that when we take stuff to, you know.
State laws allows a chief elected official to do an emergency declaration, but it has to be ratified by the governing board as soon as possible afterwards.
Yeah, so that's the
next week.
that's
So
the
that's
correct and proper way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie.
And there was extenuating circumstances.
Well, either way, it doesn't make any difference. You
Still has
go to
to
the
go.
next, it's still gotta be, yeah. So I'll move that we approve resolution 2026-28.
Second.
Give the second to Debbie. Fire. So, I saw that the state, I believe, was awarded $24 million roughly from the federal government.
For the Milwaukee,
disaster.
that was for the
That was
Milwaukee
just for
flood,
Milwaukee? I thought that was statewide.
No, well, a couple other counties, but nothing that just, for what just happened, so I don't think the dollar amount's gonna be enough.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consider resolution 2026-29 to update the fee schedule.
So this went through parks last week. It's not a giant change to the fee schedule, which I wouldn't really do in the middle of our summer park season anyway. But with the two new parks almost completed on the west side, looking at how we rent out shelters, it felt disingenuous to me to for someone to pay the same fee to rent out community shelter one, which is quite large, as the little gazebo over on Carolina Street. And so I've just basically split the fees in half for those little gazebo type things. And then we included the library gazebo, anything that looks like a gazebo, talks like a gazebo, walks like a gazebo, whatever. We just want to charge people less for that experience than the big shelters that we have at the other parks, and that's all this does.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2026-29 update to the fee schedule.
Second.
I have a question.
Second goes to Kelly. Go ahead.
So what's the hunting permit, $7? What are we gonna hunt in the park?
Oh, so that hunting permit is not part of, it is part of the parks fee schedule, but it's separate from this discussion about the gazebos. It's a fee that we charge the hunters to get licensed to use the hunting areas that are in the village bounds, which I'm pointing at, and nobody can tell this is but that's been a standard fee, and that's a standard application we've had for a long time.
Self-utilized, I think, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, what can I hunt in the village?
If you got an arrow, like a bow, an arrow, apparently quite a few things.
There are certain areas you can.
Well, I asked
I
about
have more information at the clerk's office.
the bow fishing.
So,
I had two comments. I spoke with people from the baseball league a few months ago, and I know the $300 per season concession stand fee was basically more than they brought in for the concession stand.
And I will say that we are looking at the concession stand fees, and we'd like to alter those, but I didn't want to do it mid-season because there are people that have already rented and paid those concession fees that, like, but we always reevaluate the fees at the end of the year. And we will be reevaluating the concession stand fees for the 27 season, basically.
Well, and the other thing is the way it agrees with the fields and courts, $350 per season. I know soccer gets socked with a second set of fees because they have two short seasons, whereas the other sports have one longer season. It's rated per annum.
So that's not, I mean, and I don't disagree, not necessarily relevant to this conversation, which is just specifically about those gazebo fees, but it is something we can look at later when we're readjusting.
I mean, we are approving the entire fee.
We're just approving the gazebos. But like I said, I'm happy to look at it as we reevaluate fees for next year and if we need to change definitions of what we do and say when not.
When we get to that point, I'd like to see some statistics as to, because I know the concession stand use is down because we charge that fee. Like the community club has no choice, we need to have it for the picnic,
Right.
we pay it, but I know that's why youth sports are not necessarily, they used to always have concession stands and they don't anymore because we
Yeah.
charge an exorbitant amount. I'll put,
I
here's
don't
my.
disagree about that at all, and I think it's something we've talked about as staff about the reasoning behind and why we are open to adjusting it in the future.
Can we add that to the next parks agenda?
I would like to wait till we get through the end of the summer
Just
season.
for discussion though.
I think dealing with it sooner is rather than later.
I mean, it's
Okay.
not, okay, anyway.
let's bring that to the proper committee
It-
for that. We have a motion to approve the fee resolution, which focuses on gazebo fees.
Is there a limit for these per month or per season as to how often you can use it?
So, no, a lot of times they give us a set.
Is there like a schedule then where you?
They said that they give us the dates that they're going to use it. And they have to tell us exactly. They can't just say, oh, I've rented it all for March, and then they just go use it whenever they want. They have to give me dates and times on when they actually are going to be.
So that we can have overlapping.
Yeah, because we want to be able to rent it to other people those times when it would be available. So, that's, it's not just a free-for-all. It'd be too complicated to try and facilitate that. Not just for us, but also for public works, who has to play notes and things.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Motion is to approve the fee resolution made by myself, seconded by Kelly. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. All right, communications miscellaneous business, any news and announcements?
Brother Love is in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
That's an upcoming event. Any other upcoming events? You said music in the park. Farmers market tomorrow.
Continues the information session, if you want to learn more about the highway road project. It's coming up. It's kind of the next week.
There will be a carnival for the community picnic this year for the first time in 20 years, so we'll see how that goes.
I can't wait to ride the tilt-a-whirl.
She's just gonna say that. You better have it till. Oh, there's the best ride in the world.
Probably my old age, I'll get sick. All right. Future agenda items.
The Belleville Area Music Festival applications will be up on the next consent agenda, just in case anybody was worried that we haven't seen those yet.
All right. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second thing, see, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:50.